Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur. And first of all, I want to start by saying this. This is episode 201. We had to do a live reaction for episode 200 on Saturday, and you weren't able to be a part of that, Saur. So I just wanted to start by saying 200 episodes, not bad. It's more like 450 if you go through all of the pregame and raw reactions and little videos, previews and stuff we've done, but 200 official podcast episodes, not bad, man.
What was that stat that you told me when we were just beginning our journey in the podcasting world that less than 10% of podcasts make it past the 100th episode? And we've doubled that. So clearly we must be doing something right. Well, Happy New Year to you, Scotty. Great way to kick off the year with our 200th episode. I'm very sorry that I wasn't able to join you on that episode. As you know, I was planting trees in the sub-Saharan desert, taking care of
the Saharan desert
environment. Okay, the Saharan desert. But yeah, glad that we could be here for the 201st episode, and what an episode it's gearing up to be. But also, Happy New Year to every single person who joins us every time that we go live, and everyone who's in the chat. I hope your 2026 is just as great as 2025, and may Inter Miami end up with multiple trophies this season.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say is this week, we had talked about going live on Thursday, just as a matter of course. And then this morning you texted me and said, you know what, I have some time. Let's just go live today. And then 20 minutes later, all hell broke loose, and Inter Miami had the most eventful day of transfer news that I have ever seen. So good job on you. I don't know if you had some sort of foretell that today was the day everything was going down, but excellent timing on your part.
Yeah, something told me we just had to be live today, and it wasn't me constantly monitoring Twitter and seeing all the news drop, and it was definitely not the fact that Inter Miami is making big moves in the transfer market. It was just intuition. I'm glad we were able to do it at the right time, because boy, this is going to be potentially a long episode.
Okay, on this episode, we're going to do a deep dive on David Ayala, the midfielder Inter Miami is going to get from the Portland Timbers. That's going to be sort of the bulk of this. We're going to talk about Tadeo Allende re-signing. We're going to talk about Micail. We're going to talk about Rocco Ríos Novo. Maybe we'll have some conversation about the U22 initiative and where else Inter Miami needs to go from here. But we should start with a quick conversation about Triston Blackmon, because that has been, if not the story of the day, the story of the last 3 hours. Michelle Kaufman of the Miami Herald, who is as plugged into Inter Miami as anyone, reported 90 minutes ago, maybe 2 hours ago, that Inter Miami had a deal in place with the Vancouver Whitecaps to do a cash transfer in league for MLS Defender of the Year Triston Blackmon of the Vancouver Whitecaps for about $2.5 million. 30 minutes later, Tom Bogert, who is also very well connected within the MLS, reports that that is not the case. There is nothing finalized. There's nothing official. And that's sort of where we're at. There was a statement put out by the Vancouver sporting director 20 minutes after all of this. And again, we're talking about everything being fresh, a number of minutes, not even hours, since this has all happened. They're saying basically, we know people want our players, but we're not intending to move on any of our players. We want to keep everyone here. So because that's the drama of the day, I guess we can start there. Triston Blackmon, a name we've sort of heard rumblings about over the last week, and to be fair, I didn't think this was really real. Luis Barrios in the chat made headlines with him, his reporting of this. What do you think about the situation?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. I think top lines.
Can we just start with this? I don't want to get too deep into him as a player, because I don't think this is a done deal by any stretch. So just sort of about the deal. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think broad picture speaking, I definitely think Inter Miami is interested. They're looking at him. If they can make this deal work, it will happen. I think the comments from the Vancouver CEO probably posturing, trying to calm the situation down, maybe eke out a few more bucks from Inter Miami. I don't know what that's about, but I think there's interest in Blackmon. And that for me shows ambition. It shows a sense of understanding of how they want to build this squad. We've already just announced the MLS goalkeeper of the year. Then you go out and chase the defender of the year. That just shows that when Jorge Mas said that this team is going to be ambitious in the offseason, he wasn't joking. So for me, that in itself is a big statement. Whether it happens or not, that's a secondary thing. But the fact that we're looking at such a talented player, but also the position, because let's be honest, we've just announced today the signing of Micail, who is, again, a solid defender. We're bolstering our defensive unit. And then you go out and not just push for a backup defender or a third choice defender, you go for the MLS defender of the year. That in itself speaks volumes. I think we're going to bring the defender in, whether that's Blackmon or not, debatable. But I'm very glad that this is the kind of player that Inter Miami is in for. We're showing ambition, and hopefully, maybe next week, we're sitting here and actually dissecting him as a player because he's going to be signing with Inter Miami. Let's not get our hopes high, but I think it speaks volumes of where this team is at when it comes to ambitions. We are going for that CONCACAF Champions Cup, and we might just try and do everything in our power and everything that the MLS roster rules allow us to do to make these big moves happen. Very exciting prospect. We'll see if it comes through or not.
Yeah. Okay. Here's my take on the situation. Michelle Kaufman only reports something if she gets it directly from Inter Miami. And so I think Inter Miami thinks they have a deal in place, or at least 2 hours ago, they felt they had a deal in place for Triston Blackmon. A cash transfer from Vancouver. He was on about $800,000 last year in terms of his salary. And if you pay $2.5-3 million of a cash transfer for him, you could still get him with a new contract that's in the same salary range for max TAM, for under DP level money. So you can understand why Inter Miami would want to do it, and if that was something that Blackmon was interested in, and if that was something Vancouver was willing to do, it makes a lot of sense. He is 29. He is under contract for 2 more seasons, or I guess maybe a year and a half, depending on how the shortened season works next season with everyone's pre-existing contracts. You can understand why Miami would want to do this. Short-term move for a talented player, and if it's not going to prevent you from going in and getting a big DP, make it happen. Vancouver says not so fast, and that's where Tom Bogert is what he's hearing. I will just say I don't think Tom Bogert is as plugged into Inter Miami as he is other teams in the league. So I don't really know what you do with that as fans. I don't know if we're about to get Triston Blackmon tomorrow. I don't know if the sporting director doesn't want to lose Triston Blackmon and he's sinking the deal when the ownership or someone else within his team was ready to pull the trigger on this, and that's who Miami was communicating with. Maybe it's Triston Blackmon's agent who went to Miami and organized this and had an agreement with Vancouver that will let you go for this amount of money, but maybe because it's Inter Miami, that's maybe not something Vancouver's as interested in, or as they would be if it was like a European club or something. I don't know what the deal is here, but I think Inter Miami thought 2 hours ago they were getting Triston Blackmon. And I don't think that Michelle Kaufman would have reported this if she didn't get that directly from Miami. I don't know if this whole deal falls apart now because Vancouver fans are going to now learn about it. And I don't think they're going to be particularly happy selling one of their best players to Inter Miami, even though they do have a glut of center back depth. And so I don't know if that plays a factor now. And if the sporting director maybe is really against the deal, maybe this doesn't happen. I don't know if the whole thing falls apart now, but interesting.
I don't know if what the sporting director, CEO, whoever said that statement, I don't know
his title is CEO and sporting director. So we're talking about the same person.
Yeah, so I don't think what he said actually matters in this situation. I think it's just public posturing. What's happening behind the scenes is probably completely different. I think what this confirms, Michelle Kaufman's statement, is that Inter Miami is definitely interested, and the deal could be moving in a positive direction. That's why this brief has gone out. I agree with you, of course, posturing behind the scenes. Maybe he doesn't want to lose Blackmon, but there's interest from Blackmon to move to Inter Miami, and this is his way of saying, we're going to try and keep our players no matter what, and we want him to be here. So there's a lot of back and forth going on behind the scenes, and I think another week will tell us whether he's going to be an Inter Miami player. If this happens, it's going to be so good, and I'm sure we're going to have a full podcast dedicated to that. But I want to hold our horses for now. I think for now, what's exciting about it is the fact that Inter Miami is interested in a player of his quality. That's all I want to say. I don't want to get too excited in this actually coming through, because the consequences and implications for that are immense. Which basically means I'm going to announce that Inter Miami's winning the CONCACAF Champions Cup the moment we sign Blackmon.
I just want to say, I just realized the time of some of these chats, and Luis Barros was in the chat at 1:39 this afternoon saying we're about to announce Triston Blackmon, and that was hours before anything came to light. So I think Luis might be the scooper of the week. Okay, let's switch over to David Ayala, who Inter Miami is going to get. We got lots of reporting on this today. Herman Garcia Grova earlier today, and then Tom Bogert and the MLS reporters sort of confirming this a couple hours later. Inter Miami is going to do a cash transfer of defensive midfielder David Ayala, who is Argentine, from the Portland Timbers. He is a U22, and the plan is to keep him under the U22 designation for Inter Miami. That is going to be a $2 million cash transfer to Portland. Right now, Ayala is under contract for one more season. And apparently the reason Inter Miami was the team to get him, when lots of other teams would have been interested in Ayala, is because other teams wanted to get a window to negotiate a contract extension with Ayala before pulling the trigger on buying him. And Inter Miami was willing to say, we don't need that. We'll give you $2 million for him, and if he's only here for 1 year, we'll take our chances. But we feel good enough that, A, he'll be a great player for us for these next 4 or 5 months until the end of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and that's worth it in and of itself. But B, if it's a great fit and we really want him long term, we can find a way to re-sign him, and we'll be attractive enough to re-sign him at this time in October, November, December. So that's why they were the team that could pull the trigger on this. He was a U22 under Portland Timbers designation, and because it's a cash transfer, Inter Miami is going to be allowed to keep him under the U22 designation. He is 23 years old, and for anyone confused about how that works, you have to buy a player before they turn, while they're 22 or younger, but you can keep them under that designation until they're 24 years old. And this just gives time for teams to actually sell players at the time and sort of window they want to sell them, instead of having other clubs know the clock is ticking on these players and their ability to stay within the U22 designation, so they can pounce as soon as they're not eligible for that anymore. So it gives MLS teams a little bit of extra time to sell them on their terms. And Inter Miami's benefiting from that. $2 million, Inter Miami gets their new defensive midfielder, and this is the guy that's going to replace Sergio Busquets.
These are my favorite kind of transfers because they come out of nowhere. It's a player that nobody had on their radar, and I'm so excited for this. Well, like everyone else, probably I've spent the entire afternoon looking at his highlights, how he plays, what he is as a player. And I think this is such a good fit for our midfield. You can't, in any capacity, replace Sergio Busquets directly. But you bring in this player who's young, who's very talented, Argentine, fits in the mold of what this Inter Miami team needs to be. He's athletic. He has the legs to cover long distances, large distances in the midfield. He will play as a solid defensive midfielder. He can play in a pivot. He can play as a singular six. He can play alongside Bright, Segovia, Rodrigo de Paul. I think Inter Miami might just be upgrading its midfield to the best midfield unit in the league with what we have available right now, depending on who stays and who goes after all of the dust settles. I think the 4 players that I just mentioned in Bright, Segovia, Rodrigo de Paul, and now David Ayala, phenomenal talents. They fit together so well. And I think we can talk more specifically about Ayala as well. But I am so excited about this midfield signing. I think it really ties a bow on what this midfield was starting to look like when we acquired Rodrigo de Paul. And I think, yes, you can't replace Sergio Busquets directly, but if you do replace him, this is the kind of signing that you make. Someone who's young, fresh, will add dynamism in the midfield, can find a good pass, make the line-breaking passes, and can play alongside multiple different ilks of midfielders. I'll stop there for now, but I've got so much to say on this player.
No,
Very
I
impressive.
think you nailed it. He is not going to be as good defensively as Yannick Bright, but I think he'll be the next best defensive midfielder on our team in terms of his ability to defend, like above Rodrigo de Paul and anyone else on this roster. And then in terms of his ability to be a part of build-up and be like an effective piece like Sergio Busquets was. Obviously, he's not going to be as good as Sergio Busquets, but I think he'll be better than Yannick Bright and maybe only behind a Rodrigo de Paul in that category of guys that could play in that sort of box-to-box or double pivot role. And he's 23 and young and athletic, and I think like is just kind of an excellent all-around player that Inter Miami is going to be able to put on their roster for the next year. And when you're talking about building a complete adaptable, dynamic, talented, versatile midfield, I think when you have the four guys Inter Miami has right now, which is Yannick Bright, Rodrigo de Paul, Talasco Segovia, and now David Ayala, you're talking about any combination of three gives you a fantastic midfield that you can adapt either mid-game or from game to game based on what you need and still get different but high quality midfield play. And that is like a really nice place to be in. So like you, I love this signing.
And I'm really glad that it's not just about upgrading the midfield or upgrading the defense. I think it's happening across the board. With the acquisitions that we've had in defense, you're obviously going to make your backline a little bit stronger. But also with these midfield upgrades, Inter Miami is going to struggle less on transitions because we're now acquiring a player in Ayala who's very good with his recovery runs, has pace on him, is very good with his positioning, and adds a level of defensiveness. So all of Inter Miami's weaknesses from last season, which were transition and lack of pace, lack of athleticism, all of that is now getting papered over, and not just papered over, smoothened out. And for me, that is the best thing to see here. The second aspect of this is the balance that you've just spoken about. There's multiple iterations of this midfield that you can now play around with. If you want to play three, you have different options on how you want to employ this. If you're playing against a low block, you can have Segovia, Rodrigo de Paul, and Ayala in there, all of them who are very good with playing with the ball in their feet. If you're playing dangerous counter-attacking teams, you can put in Yannick Bright and Ayala with Rodrigo de Paul in front of them. If you're playing a midfield too, you've got different combinations that you can try. And now you've actually got legs to play a midfield too as well. So the various iterations that we can employ here, the possibilities of the midfield that we can employ and the tactics that we can employ is very salivating. And I'm really glad that this is the kind of player that we've gone for. I watched his highlights for Portland. He's a utility player, but the way that he actually conducts himself on the field, his line-breaking passes are very underrated. His defensive tackling is obviously his strength. He's more of a defensive midfielder, but him on the ball plays really well under pressure, can find a pass or two. But more than that, I think what's really good about him is his ability to switch the ball back and forth. He can find a ball across the pitch and just completely unlock offenses. Guess who we've just re-signed, that will benefit from those long balls over the top, who's making runs in behind? Tadeo Allende. It's all coming together, and I really like that. And it's not just the midfield that we're focused on now. I think it's the fact that it's all assembling into a tight unit, a balanced unit, that makes me really happy with this signing. What a fantastic player.
Yeah, just want to start by saying Kareem gives a super sticker, and thank you so much for that. And he says, Miami's making this winter window so interesting. And I think what we've learned today and some of the names we've heard today also gives us so much insight into what Inter Miami's thinking is this transfer window and how it's changed from the last couple windows. Just a little bit more information on Ayala. He's from Argentina. He's Argentine. He was at Estudiantes, which is one of the sort of top 10 clubs in Argentina, but not one of the top 5, I would say. And I think Facundo Farias ended up there, him or Nico Freire. Either way, he came from Estudiantes to the Portland Timbers as a U22 player. He spent the last couple years with Portland developing into one of the best young midfielders in the league. And I think the best midfielder for Portland. And we didn't get a ton of eyes on him as Eastern Conference teams, but basically everyone in the Western Conference kind of recognizes him as a midfielder to be sort of worried about and concerned about. So huge remarks, and Portland Timber fans are really upset to see him leave, and even more frustrated to see him come to Miami. So you got to love when the fans of the team really are going to miss him. He has been with Portland long enough to get his green card, which means he will not take up an international roster slot. This is another thing we've heard that Inter Miami's really focused on this season, is not having to go out and buy another 7-8 international roster slots for their senior team roster. So even though he is from Argentina and he grew up playing for the Argentine youth teams and, wants to maybe still have a future with the national team, idolizing Messi, all that stuff, he is not going to count as an international roster player. So, I think from a roster perspective, this is a huge deal. From a midfield balance perspective, this is a huge deal. And then just from a talent acquisition perspective, this is a huge deal. And like you said about their ambition, the fact that they're willing to go out and get players right now to help them win right now and spend money on it and potentially spend money that they're not going to recoup is A, unique, but B, it's exactly the type of ambition that allows them to create these type of opportunities for themselves, and I think that's huge. One other thing I want to say, I think this is just a guess. I think Inter Miami might have had their eyes on David Ayala since October, September. His contract was going to run out with the Portland Timbers if they did not activate his extra year. But I think that there's been sort of a plan that this could be the guy to replace Busquets for a long time, and they would have just gotten him as a free agent if Portland hadn't have re-upped his contract. But even though they do, Ayala wants to come to Miami, and they knew they were going to be able to make that happen. Ayala was on the last year of his contract with Portland, so they were going to struggle to keep him if he didn't want to stay. And once Inter Miami got involved, I think there was just an excellent chance for Inter Miami to go make this deal happen.
And they tried to keep him. But this is the perfect player in terms of checking the boxes for what an Inter Miami player looks like. He's Argentinian. He's young. He is fairly experienced in a couple of different leagues, but also he has MLS experience now. He's been on the Portland team for 3 years. He's a very important part of that Portland midfield, and they wanted to keep him. But when Inter Miami came knocking, obviously it's a tempting prospect for a young 23-year-old Argentinian to play with his probably childhood hero, let's be honest. So I'm glad that Inter Miami was able to make this work. And again, this is such a perfect player, a low-risk opportunity for Inter Miami. If he's good, he can be really good. If he's not hitting form for Inter Miami, we have options to fall back on. And he's young, so we're not going to lose out on him as such. There's time for him to develop into a decent player for Inter Miami.
Well, I think he's a really good player.
Yeah, I think he's a very good player. But if we consider the risks, I think it's a very low-risk option. And I just think he helps us overcome a lot of the weaknesses that we saw last season. And that's what you want to do in the transfer window. You want to bring in players who are going to make this team better. And boy, I think Ayala makes this team better.
Okay, let's talk about the midfield as a whole, because it gives you a lot of flexibility and quality across the board. But we've looked at Segovia, Bright, RDP as like a midfield that works. And so we knew they were going to have to assign someone or maybe two guys just to fill the numbers. But they could have signed guys just to fill the numbers. And instead they went out and got a guy who's going to, I think, come in to be a starter. But I do want to sort of frame this appropriately. Sergio Busquets, legend of the game, leaving Rodrigo de Paul, world champion, Messi's best friend, huge player and huge career. Those two guys were going to play no matter what. I don't think David Ayala is that. And so right now I'm thinking for the two most defensive players in our midfield, whether that's the double pivot in a 4-4-2 like we had this year, whether it's 4-3-3 with 1-6 and 2 8s, and I'm talking about the more defensive 8 and the 6, whether it's a 4-2-3-1 and we're talking about a double pivot, like whatever it is. I think you've got Rodrigo de Paul locked in, and then I think the other spot is going to be Ayala or Yannick Bright. Depending on the situation, I also think you could have de Paul be the lead of it and have Ayala and Bright on the field together. And you're talking about a pretty athletic and defensive, like an incredibly defensively sound midfield. We're going to talk more about just the defensive signings as a whole and the goalkeeper as well. So give us a time on that. But I just want to be clear. I think the four main midfielders they have right now, Segovia, Bright, RDP, and Ayala, I think they're all going to play starter minutes. I don't think this is Ayala coming in to lock down a spot in the same way that Busquets had.
Can we quickly go through the exercise of doing formations and seeing how various iterations of midfield work? So let's say if we play a 4-4-2.
Let me just hold on a second. Yeah. Are you prepared to be here for the next hour?
Oh yeah,
because I would love to do this for the next hour.
We can condense this into 5 minutes and then do a full episode on this when we actually have our entire midfield unit ready and settled. But if you're playing a 4-4-2, I think your starting midfielder is going to be Rodrigo de Paul, and I'm guessing they're going to play Ayala next to him to begin the season, right? I think that's a very solid midfield. Yes, you lose a little bit of the range that Sergio Busquets brings in, but I think it adds an element of legs, athleticism. You can still have line breaking passes, takes away some of the defensive responsibilities that Rodrigo de Paul was carrying last season. So I'm not averse to having that. You can also play Rodrigo de Paul and Bright, which I think is a really good two-man midfield. We sometimes saw Baltazar Rodriguez playing as a third midfielder or in a 4-4-2 playing that wide midfielder sort of a role. You could have Segovia play that role as well. So you could use all three of them with Allende on the right-hand side. So there's different ways in which you can play that. But I think this for me is tending towards a 4-3-3. You need a lot of players for a 4-3-3.
I can envision about 12 different ways we could set up our midfield, if I'm being honest.
But honestly, it would be so good to have a 4-3-3 with a three-man midfield of Rodrigo de Paul, Ayala, and then Bright or Segovia, or Ayala, Segovia, and then Bright. There's just the perfect balance in there. Also, what does this mean for Baltazar, right? I don't think we're going to bring him back. I think that's more or less done and dusted.
They want to bring their guys back. So I don't know. Here's what I'll say about Baltazar. They're not going to bring him as a U22 DP.
Yeah,
so if the price can't come down from Racing to a point where they can bring him in just from a normal roster perspective, I don't think he's coming back. But I think Inter Miami is going to keep the door open for him because I do think Javier Mascherano likes him. So I'm not going to write that one off yet. But it does get to a point where you're kind of like, where is the spot for him? Yeah, how is that going to happen? And I'll be honest, we might have to do an episode if we ever have time to catch our breath on how they're going to make all this work because I haven't exactly worked it all out yet. And we'd have to do some time to
you know what? I hate the fact Inter Miami will be dormant for like 2 weeks. When we're sitting on our butts thinking, oh, we're going to do an episode now, nothing happens. And they drop like 5 different news items on the same day. Can they not space it out? We got so much time in the off season. Just space your news items out, man.
Here's the thing. Monday morning, they go in for medicals, and on Wednesday, they have their first training session. And if you're a team trying to, get off to a hot start so that you can go win the CONCACAF Champions Cup, you want your guys in right away. You don't want a player coming in week 2 of the MLS season and his first game being against Nashville in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. You know what I mean? So, and we had that last year with Maxi Falcone and Baltasar had a really late start. Alan Obando took a while to get over the line. So, if you're going to get your starting core in, do it
This is the
as
time
early as
to do it.
possible. And then also we're going to have training reports and then preseason. It's weird because we went to the MLS Cup, so the offseason
It's shortened.
is and feels way shorter than it's ever felt before.
Full
Is there
steam ahead, baby.
anything else about Ayala? I mean, I feel like because of what's happening with Triston Blackmon and Micail and Tadeo Allende, like it feels like we're too distracted for this appropriately. But like I think this is going to be a great signing for Inter Miami.
This for me is the Segovia of this season or this off season. This is probably the one I'm most excited about. I think I have a soft spot in my heart for midfielders in general, but this is a player that I think will go under the radar throughout the season. He's going to do the dirty work for you. He's going to do the unselfish work. And that for me is the kind of player that elevates a team to a different level. From what I've seen of him, he might just quickly become a fan favorite the way we have our Yannick Bright, Ian Frey. I think there's a certain spark to him. He comes from that culture, obviously, but he's also technically really good. I can just keep talking about him for a while, but the long story short is I'm very excited for this signing, and Inter Miami fans should be excited about this signing. He is an underrated player and one that's going to uplift this Inter Miami squad moving into 2026.
Yeah, and I will just say lots of players have been in Portland, been good, and not gotten the credit they deserved. We saw that with Evander last year.
Yeah.
And then they moved to like a bigger market and playing higher level leverage games on a better team, and you start to see what they're really
Flourish.
about. And it's not that they weren't flourishing already. It's just we didn't really get to see it because we weren't paying attention to the Portland Timbers or the Western Conference beyond the top teams. They're bringing back Tadeo Allende.
They're bringing back Tadeo Allende. If you'd asked me 6 months ago if this was even a possibility or if I would be happy about it, I would have whacked you across your head with a frying pan and said, don't you ever dare talk to me about that. And we're at a point where we're celebrating the fact that Inter Miami's actually managed to pull this off. This was definitely not an easy deal to do. I think Inter Miami has had to pull a lot of strings behind the scenes, but this for me shows that Tadeo Allende wanted to be here. I'm sure he's had options. I'm sure he had the possibility to continue to play in Europe. And the fact that he's coming back to Inter Miami means that he chose us and he wanted to come back to Inter Miami. And that for me is a big positive. His performances were fantastic, to say the least. Created the record for most number of goals in a single playoff run. He's always going to be cemented in Inter Miami history as that player who took us by storm in the playoffs, and run it back 2026 CONCACAF Champions Cup highest scorer, right?
They had to get him on the field. And even if that didn't mean getting specifically Tadeo Allende, they had to get a player like him because this is how Javier Mascherano wants to build this team. And this is how he feels he gets the best out of Lionel Messi. So whether it was specific, whether you could get the deal across with Tadeo Allende or not, you had to get this profile player. Like, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And so, like I just mentioned, getting guys in early and getting them acclimated, the best possible player you could get for this specific CONCACAF Champions Cup run is the guy that's already got the chemistry with everyone on your team, with Luis Suarez, with Lionel Messi, with the midfielders, with Ian Frey on that right side. So I think it's a home run for the next 6 months. I don't think there's any, like, if everything we're focused on is this CONCACAF Champions Cup, and that seems to be the case, like, I think this is the best player for this specific role you could go get without using that DP spot. Just because I think almost anyone else would take 2 months to just build their rhythm, and you might not have 2 months. So kudos to the club for getting it done. Second, I want to say Tadeo Allende wouldn't be here if he didn't want to.
Exactly.
If this wasn't where he wanted to be, he wouldn't be back. We heard that River Plate was one of the clubs really interested in him, and I'm sure he had other options. But at River Plate, they offered $3 million to Celta Vigo for 50% sell-on clause, with a 50% sell-on clause, which might be right, like at what Inter Miami's offering. I don't think Inter Miami's offering something outrageous. I think it's more like there's a sell-on clause and we're in that sort of ballpark. But I think Allende wanted to be here, and I think he probably is taking less money here than he would have gotten at River Plate because I think he likes being in Miami. He is 25, maybe 26. I think this will be his age 26 season. He's very athletic, and like when you look at his season, he was pretty good for the first 2 months, and he was fantastic for the last 2 months. And there was a portion in the middle.
So here's the thing. I think one thing about signing Allende, you have to play to his strengths. I'm not saying he's a limited player, but there's a way you maximize his presence on the football field. You have to play a style that suits him. And for me, I hope this is a sign that Inter Miami plans to play the way that they won the playoffs and not revert to what they did for majority of the season. You have to play expansive. You have to play the way you played with counter-attacking, transition football, quick, vertical passing.
Just say it. Just say it. Just say it.
No. I don't want to say it.
You
Don't
can't play
play
that way.
Suarez.
You can't play that way with Luis Suarez.
Yeah. But that's the thing, right? Like, that's what confuses me. You sign Luis Suarez, you also sign Allende. I think there's a lot of intrigue about how Inter Miami is going to play because we saw two completely different styles of football from Javi Mascherano. Does he think that Inter Miami can get far in the CONCACAF Champions Cup by playing a style that was similar to what we saw in the majority of the season? Does he want to play that expansive, free-flowing football that we saw in the playoffs? How will it all work? But when it comes to talking about Allende in general, I think you get the best out of him. You maximize his presence, his minutes, by playing expansive, free-flowing football that allows him to make the runs in behind, allows the players in the midfield to find those vertical passes, catch the teams on the break. And that's what we're excited to see from him. And that's why I think Inter Miami fans really want him to re-sign. And you mentioned that we needed a player like this. Well, no, not if we were going to play the style that we've played for a majority of the season, right?
Well, they started him every game.
Yeah, they started him every game, but I think there was a case to be made that you would have preferred somebody who was more safe and technical on the ball, who was good in possession, could hold the ball longer, right? We made that case a long time where we said Segovia should be starting instead of
I hear what
Allende,
you're saying.
so.
I hear what you're saying, but what I mean is, from Mascherano's perspective, he needed a guy like this.
Yeah. So it's slightly confusing. I think it's all very positive. Inter Miami getting this deal done. I think Allende wanting to be here. The fact that he is playing with confidence. I don't think we're going to go through a similar phase like we did last season where we're going to beg for Javi Mascherano to drop Allende for his own sake. I doubt that's going to happen. He played with a lot of confidence. I think Inter Miami now knows how to use him best. And it just keeps the chemistry flowing from what we saw last season. You talk about disruptions that happen across MLS teams from one season to the next. We saw how LA Galaxy suffered historically from having one of their best seasons to having one of their worst seasons. Continuity is important. And I'm glad that we are able to bring in Tadeo Allende, who probably had one of the biggest roles to play in Inter Miami winning the MLS Cup. So welcome back, Allende. It's been a pleasure seeing you play for Inter Miami, and glad we're going to do it for another season, maybe longer.
Do you think he'll be that? What are you expecting from him in 2026?
I think he's going to be another 20-goal player for Inter Miami. Even when he was playing really bad, he was still getting goals. Even when Inter Miami was playing that regressive defensive style of football, he was finding the back of the net.
There was a point early in the season where he was
on
also
pace
banging goals. Like there was a clear terrible period, but like it's not that it was only the playoffs.
He bunches his goals up, so he scores like 10 early, then he'll go on a bit of a hiatus, then he'll come back, score like 5, then go on a bit of a hiatus, and then he'll just end with a flourish. That's what's going to happen again, I think.
He'll maybe next time we can send him with you to go plant trees while he's on his
Yeah.
hiatus.
Yeah, might as well. Make him useful.
If he's the playoff version of himself, he could be a superstar.
Oh, yeah.
Like do you think it's out there that he's that version of himself for like 40% of the season instead of 10% of the season?
No, I think that's
No, it's not out there.
that's the likelihood.
I think
he's
probable.
Yeah, he's probably that player for 40% and then maybe not for 60%, but that's a lot. Playing at that level for 40% will get you so many goals.
I'm not talking about throughout the season. I'm talking about just that playoff run, or maybe there was 2 or 3 games before the playoffs started. You know, a 7-game sample, 8-game sample, where he was banging in goals, and when you gave him an opportunity, he finished. I can guarantee you right now that if he starts every game like he did last year, he's going to get a ton of opportunities with Messi if Messi's healthy and going. So if he can play like that, is there a 30-plus goal season out there for him? Because it felt like that could have been out there for him this year if he didn't go through the rough patch. And if that's the case, man.
If he just finished his chances, he would have easily been in contention for Golden Boot. But again, these are ifs and buts. So let's talk about what we have in terms of the sample size.
It is thinking forward of what he could be in 2026.
I think Allende's best version, if we get that over a period of over the sustained season, 30 goals, I would say 40 goal contributions.
Is it
should
possible?
Be possible.
That is ridiculous to talk about for a max TAM player. Is it possible he's the best max TAM player in the league? Like, I think it could be. If he does that, he will be the best max TAM player in the league.
And again, I'm not talking about his ability. I'm not talking about his technicality on the ball. It's output. We're talking about output. This player has genuine output. And that's actually what you want from some of your forward players.
I can't stop
All
laughing.
I'm going to say is...
I can't stop laughing because this is like the 4th most exciting thing that's happened today. And he could be a 30-goal scorer next year.
Okay, I think if he's a 15-goal scorer next season, I think that's fine, right?
I do too.
Yeah.
So, as long as you rotate him out when his form
Yeah. As long as he's contributing. 15, 20 goals, I think, is possible for him. Is in the realm of possibility. And it's a great season.
You can't have 20 goals and not have a great season.
Say, is he going to be a superstar if he scores or performs at that level? I think he's already a superstar. If you ask anybody in the MLS world, they would bite your hand off to have Tadeo Allende on their team.
And it's weird because we watch him play. And I don't think we think he's a superstar watching him play. So let's be clear. We say it too. But then you look at the numbers, and it is kind of hard to argue with.
It's all about the output with this player. And sometimes you have those kind of players, and there's nothing wrong with that. He will have a bit of a trampoline take. He's going to boot the ball out. He's going to mess up a couple of one-on-one opportunities, but then he's going to produce when it matters, and that's in the playoffs. No, in all seriousness, I think this is a very positive sign for Inter Miami. Even if he gets 15 to 20 goals next season, I think that's a very largely positive season from him. We shouldn't be expecting 30 goals. We shouldn't be expecting 40 goals. I think Inter Miami is going to sign a striker eventually in the summer. That will take up a lot of the goal scoring burden. But this, I think, is going to be a massive, massive utility player who will spread the burden out in terms of goal contributions. And we don't know what it's going to be like with Luis Suarez on the pitch, but we may rely on Tadeo Allende in the early parts of the season. And if he can continue with the form that he ended with, I think that's going to be brilliant for us.
Okay, let's move to Rocco Ríos Novo, another playoff hero that
happened as well.
Back in Miami.
Bloody hell.
We didn't got a chance to talk about it because, you were out saving the world, and also he's not going to be the starter, which is weird. We did talk about Dane St. Clair plenty of times. Like, I still think I'm very confident Dane St. Clair is the guy, and will start every game for Inter Miami this season as long as he's healthy, or if there's like a cup game that they want to rotate in. But so Rocco is sort of an afterthought, and yet also Inter Miami legend coming to Inter Miami permanently. I don't think you could have a better goalkeeping situation than what Miami has manufactured over the last couple of weeks, which is crazy considering where we were 6 months ago. I think this means that you absolutely have to buy out Oscar Stadi, and so I think you can just pencil that in. But aside from that, I think you go in with these two guys as your number one and number two, and you feel fantastic about it. And also Rocco, who I think may have had some opportunities elsewhere if he kind of played the game longer, was happy to come back and be a part of Inter Miami, and we get him on a permanent deal. So like he could be the guy 4 years from now that we look back and say he's been our starter since the day Dane St. Clair left, and like it could be great.
This was what Inter Miami's goalkeeping unit was supposed to look like last season. I think they messed it up with the way they handled the situation with Drake Callender, Oscar Stari. They panicked a little bit, but this is what it should have been. Rocco Ríos Novo being brought in as your number two, and then having a superstar goalkeeper. We've come a long way from being uncertain about who our goalkeeper is going to be. Let's be honest, if Javier Mascherano had not made that decision to start Rocco Ríos Novo, we may be having a very different conversation right now. And I'm glad we moved on from the Oscar Stari experiment. He was never supposed to be Inter Miami's player for the long term. I think this definitely means we're going to buy him out, which is the right thing to do as well. But our goalkeeping unit has suddenly gone from being uncertain and tentative to probably set for the next few years, which is wild. We now have the goalkeeper of the year for the MLS playing for Inter Miami. We now have an MLS Cup winner who contributed immensely to Inter Miami winning that cup. What else could you want? I would be comfortable if either of them starts in goal in the first game at any point during the season. And that's a very good place to be as a fan, because the goalkeeping position is one of the most important ones, as your stats have shown. And it could be the difference between Inter Miami winning 1 trophy and Inter Miami winning 3 trophies.
Also has happened in the last couple of days, Dane St. Clair was made official, and he's got a 1-year contract with a contract extension or contract option for the 2027 short season next year. So if anybody wants to keep him for the next year and a half, that's what he's under contract for. But it does feel like that's a short-term play. I think there's a chance he could leave even by the summer. I think this is short-term. Let's go win the CONCACAF Champions Cup from Inter Miami's perspective and get the best goalkeeper to do it. And from his perspective, I think he thinks he's going to shore up a Canadian top goalkeeping spot because he's going to get the exposure to Inter Miami. And not that we have time to talk about it today, but there's a fun little Orlando City thing going on there that we could talk about another time. And so for Dane St. Clair, I think like his focus is on the next 6 months, try and win the CONCACAF Champions Cup, go to the World Cup and start for Canada. And then we'll see what happens. And so I think even maybe by the end of this season, there's at least a small chance that Rocco becomes like the guy. I wouldn't necessarily predict it to go that way, but I think having Rocco as an option for you really makes you feel great about Dane St. Clair, because whenever it's his time to leave, you already have the guy you feel good about replacing him with. So I think the fact that you have both of these is as good as you could possibly ask at the beginning of this offseason.
And yeah, I just want to harp on the last 3 words that you used. Beginning of the offseason. We're already sorted with our goalkeeping situation. Last year, we were talking about this in February, March. We were halfway through our CONCACAF Champions Cup run. Yeah, basically. We were through our CONCACAF Champions Cup run when we were still talking about Drake Callender coming back from injury and all of that. So, boy, it feels good to be done with this early. No drama. You know who your number 1 is. You know who your number 2 is. And we'll figure out the number 3 situation eventually. But I think it's just the right way to handle it. There's also probably some considerations about the short season in 2027. That's probably why they've given St. Clair like a shorter sort of a contract. But either ways, 2 very solid players. And I think we go only up from here when it comes to our goalkeeping situation. Very happy with how this has been handled.
Yeah, I think they aced it. We'll see what the rest of the offseason looks like. But if you buy out Ustadi and then you have a Will Yarbrough type play. By the way, Will Yarbrough signed a contract with Toronto, so congratulations to him getting
And Drake
picked up
Allender is
early,
moving to Minnesota as well. Yeah.
replacing Dane St. Clair. Good. I think it's a good spot for him.
Yeah.
I think they can get like a veteran late play on your supplemental roster that won't affect things, and then you buy Ostari, and I think you nailed the goalkeeping position. I really do. Okay, let's move forward. Micail. We did an emergency episode on him on Saturday when the news broke, but you were still digging for good places to plant the seeds or whatever it is you do. Any thoughts on Micail now that he's coming? And it was made official today, by the way.
For me, I thought that was going to be the main center-back signing that we're going to make. Brilliant player with MLS experience, solid, has played with a top team in a very difficult league with Palmeiras. I don't think we went up against him in the Club World Cup, but he had a big role to play there as well. I think he came on in the round of 16 of the quarterfinals, one of the games against maybe Botafogo. So he has a lot of experience, a trusted veteran in the sport, and he's only 26, I believe. Maybe he's slightly older, but
Micail, 25.
yeah, there you go, 25.
He turned 25 in August.
Perfect age profile, and you know what? He's tall. One thing that Inter Miami doesn't have is height, and he is tall, and I think he's being brought in to be a starter. Interesting times. You don't think so?
I think he's coming in to be a star.
Oh, that's a sentence and a half. Him and Maxi Falcone together in that backline is utter chaos, but I'm here for it. I think it's going to be fantastic to watch. How have we gone from being so tentative and iffy about our backline with Sergio Christoph, Nico Freire,
No, but
David
even
Martinez?
think about last year, right? The plan was not for Noah Allen to be a guy, right? Noah, I mean, again, I think we saw a little bit of a flash in 2024 at the end of the season of Noah Allen at center back, and we liked it, and we wanted to see where it went. But like, I think a lot of people maybe thought he was still a left back, and not that he can still be a left back, but like we didn't see him consistently play well at center back. The plan was to go with Gonzalo Lujan and Maxi Falcone, 8 months ago, 10 months ago. And then you still had David Martinez and Toto Aviles were like guys in consideration. So the fact that you've got a Micail, who I think is clearly the best, most talented center back Inter Miami's had since at least Kamal Miller, and probably above that, potentially ever. Although let's see what he does on the field. I think it's a fantastic signing, and I guess I'll leave the thoughts to you because I already had my opportunity to speak glowingly about that signing, but I'm super excited about him.
No, I'm just going to repeat myself that Inter Miami had weaknesses last season that we eventually came over somehow. Our attacking output sort of papered over it. I'm glad to see that they're now focusing on completely dispelling those weaknesses and plugging the holes. And how? This is, I think, not just plugging the holes. This is building a whole new ship. If we sign another centre back, I doubt we see Gonzalo Lujan start for Inter Miami ever again. I think he's gone. It's going to, I think, determine the futures of a couple of players. But if it means that Inter Miami has an elite defensive setup, I'm all for it.
I think Lujan has to be gone almost already because of all the money they're spending on these other guys.
Absolutely.
Like he's too big of a roster charge to keep him, I think. Okay, let's get into some bigger picture conversations. Specifically about the U22, and there's so many things that happened today that we could just go into so many conversations about our defense, our midfield, what we want to do moving forward. But I did want to have a conversation about the U22 slots and get your thoughts. Inter Miami right now, after getting David Ayala, will have 4 U22s and 2 DPs. Now, that's okay. You can do that. In the MLS, you can either have 2 DPs and 4 U22s plus get some allocation money, or you can switch up and go 3 DPs and 3 U22s and not get the extra allocation money, but have the bigger DP play. Right now, they have 4 U22s, which means they couldn't go out and sign another DP even if they wanted to. But those 4 U22s are Matteo Silvetti, David Ayala, Telasco Segovia, and Toto Aviles. I think we can feel relatively confident that Aviles will not be on the roster this year. The reason I say it like that is because they're not desperate to get rid of him. They could keep him technically. So it's not like they have to take the lowest offer and just get rid of him. But I do think we're going to see him move on before the end of the season, not even for roster reasons, but just because it's probably the best thing for his career, and his relationship with Javier Mascherano doesn't seem like one that is about fostering his ability and trying to grow him into a superstar. So for him, I think he's got to move. Now, whether that's to Atlanta with Tata Martino or to Zaragoza, which is partially owned by the Mas brothers in La Liga too, like whatever it is, I think we can and probably should assume he's not going to be here. So that means you could already sign another U22 player if you stick with 2 and 4, or you could stick with these 3, Ayala, Segovia, and Matteo Silvetti, and then just wait to sign a third DP whenever that right player comes, whether it pops open at some point this month or whether they wait till the summer after the World Cup. The other thing I should mention, and I've mentioned this many times, and Inter Miami's never done it, so maybe they have their reason why they've never done it. Talasco Segovia could be bought out of U22 status if they wanted to go that route. So I actually think and feel pretty comfortably, and SPH mentions him in the chat, they could go out and sign another U22 player if they wanted to. He mentions Moises Paniagua, who maybe we can talk about in a minute, young winger out of Bolivia. But with the DP spot open and potentially a U22 spot open, they can still do a lot in terms of adding to this roster. How are you feeling about all that?
They will do a lot in terms of adding to this roster. I think you're right about Aviles. This is the right time for him to move on wherever it is, whether it's in the MLS, whether it's abroad, which leaves Inter Miami with potentially 3 U22s, 2 DPs. If I were the front office and I was constructing this roster, I think the DP that you're trying to go for, which is the DP number 9, is only available in the summer. I know MLS has the options of flexibility now where you can actually change the iteration from 2-4 to 3-3 midway through the season. So the way I would look at it would bring potentially a U22 striker in to back Suarez up, have that 4 U22 option, and then in the summer, you either move on to Lasco Segovia, who I think is eventually going to leave.
Well,
you either buy
you
him
can also
down.
buy him down. Yeah.
You buy him down, and then you get that third DP, and that's the most intelligent way to do it, at least in my head. I think Inter Miami should wait, be patient for that superstar DP that we want in that number 9 role for the 6 months for the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Bring in a solid U22 striker signing and work with that. And that, I think, is the best way to construct this roster for now. Tell me why you agree or disagree on that.
I do want to be clear. I think Inter Miami will be open to something shaking open in the DP category.
I agree.
I think Inter Miami wants a third DP that is of the caliber and reputation of a Rodrigo de Paul, at least. Like I don't
like
think
a
they want
Lautaro Martinez.
Well, maybe not him specifically, but like I don't think they want to go sign an MLS veteran for $2.5 million and that be their DP. And so you look around the world, I don't think there's many players that are going to be available right now in that sort of prestige category, much less ones you can convince to come to Inter Miami. It is also January 7th, and I know how the transfer window works in the biggest leagues in the world, and a lot can change over the next 3.5 weeks. So I'm going to leave room open that in the next 24 days, some superstar decides there's a new coach in my club, and I don't want to deal with it, and I want to go play somewhere else, and Inter Miami wants to bring me in, and you know what? It could be fun. Like, I will leave that as a possibility that Inter Miami will at least examine. But I agree with you. I think most of the players in the world that are of that category are not even going to consider a move right ahead of the World Cup. And so then the World Cup comes, and all of a sudden you're 4 years away from the next one, and being at a top club doesn't even matter as much. And maybe you do want to relax a little bit, and you want to be in a place with better weather, and you want to be on a maybe you're on a mid-table team and you want to be on a team that's winning trophies all the time and is competing for the highest honors. So, like, I do think there's going to be a lot more possibilities in the summer. I just think there's a chance that something could shake loose, even if it's a 1% chance. And if it does, I think Inter Miami would pounce on it. That said, I totally agree with you. Go with 4 U22s until the summer.
Yep.
Get the extra GAM, the allocation money. That'll help. And bring me a U22 winger from Bolivia that's super technical and athletic. And now we're talking about a complete roster. I love the idea of that. Where do they go from here? What else do they need?
Up, man. Up.
No, what else do they need?
Let's
on the
see.
roster?
What do we have already? We have Luis
They're set at
Suarez coming
goalkeeper.
back.
Let's go
They're
back
set
to
on
front.
goalkeeping.
Let's go
Yeah,
back to
okay.
front. They're
They're
set
set
at
on
goalkeeper.
goalkeeping. No
Right
need
back,
for that.
set.
No, actually, they need a third choice goalkeeper. I
Okay,
don't
but-
think Ustari is going to be that, but that's a
I
different
agree.
story. Okay.
Easy
Right
to do
back.
at the end of the window. Set. Left back, I think they're set with Reguilon and Noah Allen.
I think so. Yeah.
At center back, I think they're set if they have to be, and they can add a piece if they get the right piece.
Here's what I think is going to happen. I think they're going to let go of Aviles, probably move on Lujan. Micail coming in. We've got technically 3 starting level center backs right now with Maxi Falcon, Micail, and Noah Allen, who's also going to be playing as a backup left back potentially. I think we need one starting caliber center back, perhaps.
Okay. You think they do? You think they need
I
one?
think they do. Yeah.
Because remember, and I want to talk about this in a minute, Javier Mascherano does not rotate a ton.
Yeah. But I still think they need a 4th center back because
What about
you only have 2 starting center backs right now, technically.
what about Ian Fred?
Yeah, I think so. But that also covers for Gonzalo Lujan leaving. So I think having Ian Frey as that option to play centre back is good, but you still need to bring in a starting centre back. And I think they're considering it.
I think they're definitely considering it. And I think they can,
Yeah.
if they can, and if it's the right deal, they will. But I think if they can't find the right deal or make it happen, and listen, I think they thought they were getting Triston Blackmon today, and maybe they will tomorrow. Like, that could happen.
Maybe it
but I
happens
think-
while we're live.
I should check Twitter before we hang up
Yeah,
on this.
probably.
I think they could stand pat, still move on Aviles, still move on Lujan, have Micail, Falcone, Noah Allen, Ian Frey as 4 starting level center backs, and then still have Del Talabi, the super draft pick, still have Tyler Hall, still have like the emergency depth options in case you need them. But you have 4 guys that you feel good starting as starters. And then if you can get the right piece, you can go get it. So I agree. So I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
In the midfield, we have been talking about them needing at least a midfielder, maybe 2. Right now, they have Rodrigo de Paul, Talasco Segovia, Yannick Bright, David Ayala as 4 guys that I think we feel good about all 4 of them starting. David Ruiz, still on the roster, who I think if he's your 5th midfielder, like I think you feel okay there.
Yeah.
Still have Santiago Morales and Ian Frey, also a guy who can play in the midfield. Still want one more? And what
Given
category
that-
of player are we?
I think we can maybe do with like a backup central midfielder, someone like a David Ruiz, but I doubt Intamami's going to go for that. I think we're set at midfield. Javi Mascherano doesn't like to rotate much. If we're playing a 4-4-2, this is more than enough. And if we're playing a 4-3-3, maybe you bring in one more, but I think we're probably set. I would potentially bring in a central midfielder who can play in multiple positions, like a utility player, like a Benjamin Kramaski maybe, but like of a lower backup quality. Someone who doesn't demand the minutes every game.
Maybe it depends on outgoings. Like if David Ruiz leaves, I think you have to
bring in
get him,
someone.
another one.
Yeah.
What I will say is I think similar to center back, I think if they can find a guy they really like, I think they will bring in someone, but I don't think you have to.
Yeah.
I still think they got a lot of work to do up front.
I agree.
Matteo Silvetti on the left. Luis Suarez up top.
Up top. Yeah. Let's be honest. Yeah.
Messi on the right. Allende as a rotation piece. Those 4 for 3 spots. I don't think that's enough. And they don't
think
have a young kid. Like they have Israel Bowe, right? They have Tyler Hall. They have Del
They don't
Talabi
have
in the
a-
Super Draft. Santi Morales. They don't have like a young kid that could just
You got Daniel
you could
Pinto.
pencil in. Well, maybe they'll have. We don't. He could leave.
Yeah,
this
we don't
month.
know. No, I think we need a winger, maybe a U22 winger if I was making the roster, and then you need a backup striker. You need 2 more forwards.
Do you definitely need a backup striker, or do
No,
you
you
feel
could-
Suarez and Allende are good enough?
You could do away with it, but you definitely need a winger. I'd be very comfortable if we get like a backup Alan Abondo sort of a player who doesn't get that many minutes, but is there in case we need him. But I think you'd be comfortable with Allende and Suarez as your two options up top, and then have a outright winger. Because let's be honest, Messi, Silvetti as your two wingers. If Silvetti gets injured or is
No,
on
I
international
agree.
duty or whatever, like you don't have anyone. So
You can.
or
You.
you could play Allende
I
and
think you could.
Segovia.
I think you could make do for a couple games,
Yeah.
but you don't want that to be a plan for the
No,
summer.
I think you bring in one more, at least
you have to.
one more winger.
I think you have to bring in one more winger. So I think you need a third goalkeeper. I think you need another winger, and then I think another center back and another midfielder are nice to haves, and the backup striker nice to haves, but not imperative. So I do think if they get this Blackmon deal over the line, it's go get yourself a young winger, maybe a U22 winger like Moises Paniagua. And I think you feel really good about the roster. And then if you could, if you get a nice
then it's just
striker
additions.
option, right?
Yeah.
But that team feels like it's ready to go compete. If you give me one,
Here's
more.
my question: do you think there's any universe in which we can construct a better team than last season?
We'll see. It's going to be hard. I don't want to
I don't think
disrespect
so.
Jordi
Yeah.
Alba and Sergio
No, I
Busquets.
don't think so. I think those two were outliers that completely took the average up, and you can't replace them in any realm of possibility. So I think we may come close, but we're not going to surpass that, which is fine.
Okay, then so much to talk about. Again, all of these could be 25-minute conversations. I'm just going to note this quickly because there's some chats there's some chats I want to get to. The team's getting a lot younger. Everyone they've signed is way younger in profile. Dane St. Clair's 28, but as a goalkeeper, that's like a 23-year-old for any other position. Then everyone else, 25, 26, 24, like they are 23 for David Ayala. They are getting younger and more athletic, and I think that's a great sign.
I think that's the way to go with this team. We saw in the playoffs that you surround Messi with fresh legs, with athletic legs, you get the best out of this team. It's a beast to compete against. And I think they saw that blueprint and they want to hammer that home. I think that's the way to go. You build the foundation on youth and you surround them with experience, and then you have Messi at the till guarding the ship. That's the way to construct this. And I'm glad that's the direction they've chosen to go.
Kareem, thanks for the super chat. He says, how do we win MLS Cup with a 5'10 goalkeeper and a 5'10 and 5'8 center
Because
backs?
they had the dog in them. That's how.
They were them when it came to that moment. And also we had this guy named Lionel Messi. And also Rodrigo De Paul with the goal of the year. And also we had Tadeo Allende. How could we lose? You know what the funny thing about Tadeo Allende? He breaks the record. He actually had another goal in there that was an own goal off of Eddie Campo in the final too, where if he puts that on top, it could have been 10. Okay. I want to talk about Mascherano and his ability to rotate because I think right now you're building a team that has too many players to just have 111. But I think that's going to have to be a conversation for another day. So if you have quick thoughts, we can get to it. But there's a lot of chats that were really good that I want to get back to.
No, let's get to the chats because I think their voice deserves to be heard more than ours. So let's stick to the chat.
Sergio says, why do we need Ayala if we have Bright?
I think Bright is a more quintessential number 6 destroyer. Ayala offers a little bit more versatility. He's good on the ball, passing range is good, and you need a backup. We need another central midfielder. You can't go into the season having just Bright, Rodrigo De Paul, and Segovia as your midfielders. So I don't think either of them are going to be this or that. They're both going to get starting level minutes, and we're going to be thankful for having both of them on our roster.
I think they're both going to get starter level minutes, so I'm not worried about it. And a lot of people are really excited about Ayala. Don't sleep on Yannick Bright. He has some of the best defensive numbers. Him and Andres Cubas were the best defensive midfielders in the league last year, and like, if you give him a real chance, which I don't think he ever really got with Busquets and Rodrigo De Paul in the lineup, I think he could win it against almost anyone else.
Yep, agree.
EMZ says, I'm afraid Noah Allen and Ian Frey might go on loan. sort of similar conversation with Noah Allen. I'm sorry, with Yannick Bright. Are you worried about their minutes at all with some of these additions?
No, I think it's a long season, and we've seen that one injury can change things. So I'm not worried. I think there's going to be plenty of minutes for these players. Noah Allen can play in multiple positions. Yannick Bright is going to eventually fight for his place and win it. Um, I hope Javi Marchano goes for a midfield three, because if not, then it will limit minutes for a few players. But with Noah Allen, I think he's going to get plenty of minutes in multiple different positions. Same for Frey. Yannick Bright, I think, will depend on the position, but he'll probably get there as well.
Yeah, I think those guys are, if you put them in a real competition, they're going to win themselves some minutes. So it doesn't bother me. Josh says, does Blackmon have any decision regarding being traded? So reportedly, this would be a cash transfer, so he would have say in it. Yeah. If he was traded, he wouldn't, but again, this would be a cash transfer. Luis says his only concern with Ayala is the injuries concern, but again, I think if your midfield is only Yannick Bright and Rodrigo de Paul, you still feel pretty good.
I agree. I'm so excited with the way this is all coming together, man. There's just so much to talk about and so many different dimensions too. I think we could do a single episode on every player that we sign.
We could.
And maybe we should. I don't know. Maybe we should.
Are you saying something like a 20-minute drive pink?
No. I'm not committing to that again. I am not committing to what we did last year. That was the most excruciating 20 minutes of recording for 30 players? Jeez.
Yeah. Okay. I want to check Twitter and make sure nothing's happened while we've.
I can assure you nothing's happened while we've been online. So
okay.
Thankfully, this is it.
Is there anything else? Is there anything else in your mind? I mean, we didn't even really talk about how this impacts Suarez, because you are getting a number of players that feel like pushing him out of the starting 11, and yet it's Luis Suarez. But that also feels like a half-an-hour conversation we don't have time for.
I think the short answer is Inter Miami is building the squad with the eye towards the summer rather than just now. I think Suarez probably in the summer might be gone. I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that, but
it also feels like they're, on the flip side, building it all for the next 6 months or for this CONCACAF Champions Cup run. Like
yeah,
a lot
it's weird,
of these
isn't
deals,
it? It feels long-term planning, but also doesn't. Yeah.
A lot of these deals feel like, listen, we're getting David Ayala confirmed for 1 year. We're getting Dane St. Clair confirmed for 1 year. Like, if they ball out and they go to the World Cup, like, could they be gone in the summer? Maybe. But if they get you the CONCACAF Champions Cup in the meantime, I think it's worth it. So I love that they're going all out for it. I also just want to say, they're doing the smart thing by not getting a DP that's not the right DP, and yet still kind of going all out for the CONCACAF Champions Cup. It is a really hard needle to thread, and it feels like they're doing it right now. Sean is saying 1997 Marlins fire sale incoming. For those that don't, I'm not even going to get into that reference, but like, it does feel like there's a lot of assets to move if they want to. So, like, I think this specific team we're going to get could be a 6 to 12 month thing, but it's going to be like a great 6 to 12 months.
As I said, I think there might be another reason to that, which is the 2027 season, which is obviously going to be different. The contract situations there might be different. That's why they're playing it safe. I don't know what it is, but I agree there might be a couple of heartbreaks in store for us as we try and be roster compliant over the next month or two. But hey, it doesn't mean that in the meantime we can't dream of having every single player that we love on this team for the rest of the season.
Hold on, I might have an update on Triston Blackmon. If you can give me a second.
Okay, I will give you a second, but I will say, if we sign Triston Blackmon, are we going for another 2 hours? Because I don't know if we can do that.
Okay, this is from Manuel Veth, who I think works for Transfermarkt. That there was an offer for $3 million, around $3 million, but that the Whitecaps would have received the payments in installments, which would have made it difficult to reinvest in the squad. So maybe that's why. Maybe the number is the right number, but the way payment was being paid is why this hasn't happened yet. I guess we'll just leave on this. So are we getting Triston Blackmon tomorrow? Are we getting Triston Blackmon at all or not? What do you think?
I think it's happening, guys.
It feels like tomorrow is the day.
Yeah,
like,
if it doesn't happen tomorrow, then yeah.
I do think Inter Miami thinks they have a deal, or at least a couple hours ago they thought they had a deal. And either Vancouver is kind of posturing for some last-minute concession or whatever, or they're trying to quell this. So I think it's going to happen in the next number of hours. If it's going to happen, I think if we're here on Monday and it hasn't happened yet, it's not going to happen. So
yeah,
we'll see you
exciting
tomorrow
times,
with an
man.
episode on Triston Blackmon.
We'll see. We'll see if it happens.
All right, guys. Thank you for sticking with us. An hour and 15-minute episode that probably should have been 2 hours and 15 minutes because there was so much to go on today. But Saur, welcome back. It is officially 2026. It has been an incredibly exciting start to the year for Inter Miami, coming off an MLS Cup and looking to do even bigger and better things moving forward. They still have a DP spot available. I mean, they have a lot of flexibility if they want to maximize what they can do and be. And we're going to talk about all of it as it happens. Guys, thanks so much for listening. We will see you guys next time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.